a good sense of far away from home. And we wouldn't even know the customs or the traditions of the country in which we are in. And to make things a little bit worse for us, if we didn't even know the language, right? Because of the country that we were in, because we wouldn't understand what they were saying, right? I have that problem when I go to the nail salon sometimes. I'll just sit there and listen. Sometimes I say, yeah, I know it. But we don't understand what they're saying, right? And if we was in a different country, we wouldn't know what they were saying if we didn't know the language. So that would make us a little more uncomfortable than what we already were. And we wouldn't know how to communicate, right? We wouldn't know how to ask where the nearest store was or where there was somewhere to get something to eat. We'd be sitting there trying to make gestures with our hands or something. You know, it would make it very strange for us. We'd be in strange surroundings that we're in. Even traffic signs are different in other countries. They drive on the opposite side of the road, so then we'd be all confused, right? We wouldn't even know what to do about all that if we were having to drive. And so things could be very uncomfortable, and they could be very difficult for each and every one of us. And so, but then while we're in this foreign country, we come across a family in the foreign country, and they take us in. They take us in under their wing, and they care for us, right? They show us the ways of their country. They show us the things that we need, that we would become maybe familiar with, or maybe would understand a little better. They do these things, and then it starts to begin to make us feel a little safer. It makes us feel safe within these strange surroundings that we're in. And so they give us a sense maybe of belonging. They try to include us, right? Everybody likes to be included, don't we? We don't like to be kept out of anything, right? We don't like to be maybe considered as an outcast. But they give us that sense of belonging, and then and community emerges from all this, from the new relationship that we've really started with this family that we've come in contact with. Well, Ruth here was a young Moabite, pretty similar to the Canaanites. The Moabites worship idols like Baal and all those different things. They didn't believe in the God of Israel. And so, but she had this particular experience, right? And through it, though, she found the God of Israel. And so this lesson today, it will show us how family can be a shelter, right, from the unfamiliar, from unfamiliar things. And it can become really a home to a stranger, to the stranger. And so there are many definitions here that can be found for community, and family is a good definition for a community. We all know those around us, right? We all know those who live maybe down the street or in the backyard or whatever within our community. We pretty well know everyone. I'm known as David Crump's son. They don't never know my name, but they know who I belong to. But I know a lot of people within our community. And so when we feel very comfortable, right? We feel comfortable when we go places, and we look out for each other, right? A lot of people, most of our neighbors, look out for one another where I am. And we all feel very safe in the community that we have there. And we look out for each other, and we help each other if one of us needs something. And that's the way a community does. A community is a family that's not really bound by blood, right? But the love that they have for one another. We've always heard this expression or these words said here. We have heard that blood is thicker than water, right? We've heard that a lot, and we've probably even said that ourselves. But today we're going to learn the story of how love is actually thicker than blood here with the story of Ruth and Naomi. And so we'll begin here with chapter 1, verse 1. And it says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion, of Euphrates, of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there." And so here's a story of David's family. It's truly a love story here. And so the love here we see of a husband and wife, and the love of parents for their children, and we're going to see the love of in-laws for each other. But even though the word love is really only mentioned here in Ruth in verse 4 and 15, it's only mentioned once, but it is really our central theme today of this lesson. The story starts just simply enough here that there was a famine that arose in the land here of Bethlehem, Judah. And we know in our own lives and in our own situations that natural disasters have a way of disrupting our normal way of life, right? When we hadn't had any snow in a long time, but all you got to do is mention you're going to get an inch of snow, and you go to the grocery store and you can't find any milk, you can't find any bread, you can't find any bacon, you can't find any eggs, and you're going from store to store to store. And I wonder what people's going to do with all these things they're buying up. If they lose power, I guess they're going to stick it out in the snow if they get a half inch or inch, whatever. But it causes a lot of disruption. Oh my gosh, we got to hurry and run and buy some groceries, or we got to run and stock up on gas, or whatever the case may be. We all kind of panic and go crazy. And then people like me that wait till the last minute to go to the store can't find anything, right? So that's kind of like a famine to me, because I'm not big on buying any sausages anymore and things like that. I like steak and hamburger and some good food. But then I wind up having to buy whatever's left. I can't find any Swaggerty sausage, so I'm having to buy a Great Value or something. But you see the point. Natural disasters, it causes things to disrupt our life, the things that are normal to us. A bad storm comes through, and it knocks out our power, maybe just for a few hours, and then we begin to go into a panic, like it's the end of the world. We don't have any power. Oh my gosh. Right? I know Mom, if she knows it's going to come a storm or something, she'll run a bathtub of water. She's pretty smart. I'm not that smart. I don't run a bathtub of water. So then I don't have any water, except for what I've got in jugs or something. But we do things, and then we go crazy because we don't have any power. We go to turn the light switch on and I have no lights. Well, we got to get the candles out, or we got to get the flashlights out. It drives us nuts, right? And then we're upset maybe because we can't watch Andy Griffith on TV, or Gunsmoke, or Newsmax, or whatever the case may be. We don't have our TV, so now we really don't know what to do, right? We're really going crazy. Our normal world has come to an end. And then we worry about the food that we do have in the fridge. We don't have any power. We worry about our food. We're going to lose what food we had in there. We want to keep that refrigerator door, right? And heaven forbid if we lose power for a day or two, which has happened, because I'll go check into the motel or the hotel. I won't rough it anymore. I tried that one time, and I won't do it again. I'll go spend that $160 a night just so I'll have power, running water, and heat. But I'll run and get a hotel because I can't be without power. I'm just as guilty as anybody else in here this morning. I go crazy. And so famines were the bad storms in the book of Ruth here, and they happen quite often. And famines are mentioned often in the Bible. And the great famine that lasted 7 years in Joseph's time, there in Genesis chapter 41, verse 28 through 30, it says, "This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten." Watch the news or know of missionaries and things of other what we call third world countries that don't have the running water and the power and electricity. There's a lot of famine in those different places. They don't have the food that we have, right? And there's a lot of starvation in the world. So that happens today. There's still a famine that goes on in different parts of the world, and sometimes even maybe in our own country that we don't really hear about or know about. But the famines in Israel were considered a curse for their disobedience. And so, but then we're introduced here to the man Amalek and his wife and his 2 sons. And they decided to leave Bethlehem, and they decided to journey to Moab, and they did this. They were going there to find food. Now, Moab was a country that was southeast of Israel, on the opposite side there of the Dead Sea. And so the people there were the descendants of Lot through his oldest daughter's incest with him. That's who the people of Moab were, and Amalek was the head here of this household. His name means, my God is king. And Naomi, his wife's name, means pleasant or delightful. And so to migrate, just even for a temporary time, just for a little time, to a foreign land, it was a drastic measure to take. We know of a lot of people, especially in the coal mines of Kentucky and West Virginia. Those folk will go anywhere to find a different job or to find a better job, or maybe they shut the coal mine down and they got to go find a job. But a lot of people will leave their home state of which they've grown up in to find a job, to care for their family. And that'd be the same thing as if I leave North Carolina and go somewhere else, and I would be just about like these people here. I'd feel like a foreigner in a foreign land. I wouldn't know where I was at. I wouldn't know anybody, certainly. And so it would be a drastic measure even for us in that situation. But there were others who apparently stayed and survived there in Bethlehem of Judah. Maybe the hardships that follow this particular family could be evidence that they might have got out of God's will. We know that later on, these two sons are going to marry Moabite women, and the Lord was very plain that the Israelites should stay within their own people, within their own marriage, because they believed in the God. They believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the people of Moab and Canaan didn't believe in that God. They believed in all these other false gods and worshiped Baal and all these things. So that was the reason for that. But nonetheless, Amalek here, he took his family from Bethlehem, Judah, to the land of Moab to find food, because he was the head of the household, and he felt that was the right thing for him to do. They couldn't find any food where they were. They could find it next door to the neighboring country. So he loaded up the station wagon and the wagon wheels or whatever, the covered wagon, and took off to the land of Moab to find food for his family. Verse 3, and Amalek, Naomi's husband of one, was Orpah, and the name of the other, Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died, also both of them, and the woman was left of her two sons and her husband. And so it's an interesting fact here that Amalek family came from Bethlehem, because the name Bethlehem just simply means the house of bread. So how in the world could it be a famine? But there was. And yet they were facing a bread shortage. Now we're saying bread, but bread was often a term that was used. It was a generic term for food. And so we're told here that the husband died, Amalek died, and then the two sons married these two women of Moab. And then within 10 years, tragedy yet struck the family again. The two sons now have died, and there were three widows now. There was just one, and the sons were able to take care of their mother and the two wives that they had taken. But now they have also died, and now the three widows alone were facing this cruel world that they were in all alone. And so Naomi was left with her two daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Orpah. And so they were in a time really of total disruption in the family. First, Amalek had died. And then, the two sons got married. Everything was kind of okay. At least there were two men that was able to take care of them and provide for them and all those things. And so they learned to lean on them since Amalek was gone. But now those two are now gone. Now they don't have any men around the house. They don't have any men to help take care of them. They don't have any men to provide for them, to work, whatever the case may be, work in the garden, water the tomatoes, water the green beans. They didn't have none of this, right? And so now they're within this time of total disruption within their family. So she was deprived really of all income. They didn't have Social Security. They didn't have Medicare. They didn't have all this government assistance, right? And so they didn't have anybody to provide any type of income. She didn't have an insurance policy to fall back on. She didn't have anything like that to cash in. She didn't have any 401k that Amalek and these sons had left for them to be able to live on. Didn't have none of that we have today. And so they were certainly face really a future of poverty. And so in this time, a woman without a man's support really was destitute. They were in a destitute situation. And so the family name also faced the end because Naomi was too old to bear any children. And the two sons hadn't had any children yet with their wives that they took from Moab. And so the family name was going to be gone. It wasn't going to be no more. And so she could have felt maybe responsible for all these awful things happening. Sometimes we feel responsible for a lot of terrible and awful things that happen within our lives. But we do when those bad things happen. We think we are to blame. But Naomi knew, however, the God of Israel. And she could rest assured in him that he would take care of her. He could do what she needed. And so I'm glad this morning that I know the God of Israel. I'm glad that I know the God of the Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he can take care of me and you here this morning. No matter how rough this life may get for us, no matter how great or how big or how small the trials that we go through, any trial we go through, we think are great or so big. But we go through them. We know that God is going to certainly, he will take care of each and every one of us. Verse 6, then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her two daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her two daughters-in-law, go return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. And the Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And so Naomi had heard of the bread that the famine was over in her hometown. And so she was wanting to return from this foreign land that she had been in 10 years. She still felt that she was in a foreign land. And so there's two different decisions here that kindly confronted Naomi. When she heard that God had brought food back to her homeland of Judah, the first one was that she would return to the land of her origin. She would go back home. And this led to her decision number two that she was going to make. She would not take her two daughter-in-laws with her. And the reason for that, they were of the Moabite tribe, okay? And they were widows, and it would be a lot easier for them to find a husband in their own country than coming back to the land of Israel, to Bethlehem, where the Jews, because they wouldn't probably find really a husband because they were foreigners. If they went back with her to Bethlehem, Judah, then they were going to be the foreigners in this case, no matter that they had married the two of Amalek's sons. But it would have been easier for them to find their husbands in their own country. And so with deep emotion here, because they had been a part of Naomi's life for 10 years, and they had certainly no doubt helped take care of her too, or also. So they already had bonded, right? They had this these foreigners of Moab, and they had come in this relationship with Naomi's two sons, and so now they had become a community. They had become family, right? And so they had a love for one another. We have a love for people in our family. We have a love for people that come into our families, right? And so we treat them just like we do our own blood. And so that's what was going on with the two daughters here, Ruth and Orpah, with Naomi. And so she had a deep emotion, and she hugged them and kissed them, and she was really telling them goodbye, pretty much don't want you to come with me, or you can't come with me, or y'all stay behind because this is your home. I'm going back to my home. And a lot of time we go on vacation or go out of town, and we can't wait to get back home. The closer we get to home, the happier we get, because number one, we're going to get to be in our own bed and all this good. We have all of our different reasons. We like to do things and go out of town, but a lot of time we can't wait to get back home. And so she was wanting to get back home, to go back to her homeland. And so she sent them on their way with the blessings of Israel's God. She was giving a prayer of blessing them because they had really been kindly to her and showed her love and appreciation because they wasn't around when Amalek had died, but they were kind to her with the dealings of her two sons that they were married to that died and passed away, and they helped to take care of that, and it felt to them that it was their responsibility to take care of Naomi. And so, but she was trying to send them on their way with the blessings of God because she wanted the girls' mother and family to welcome them back kindly and show them the kindness that these two women have shown Naomi. She wanted them to be treated as well as they had treated her. But going back home, we're joyful with that thought, right? But if you've ever experienced death or bereavement, and then you don't even know what that return will be like. We don't know what how painful that's going to be for us, right? Because she's going back home, and Amalek's not with her. Her two sons are not with her. And so for Naomi, there had been many years of famine in Judah since she first left. But now all she had as family were the two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. So going home was no longer what she thought it was going to be really when she left, because it's almost as she's going home to start over herself. She doesn't have her husband. She doesn't have her two sons. And so much had happened within that time frame of them being gone. And so Naomi tried to convince her two daughter-in-laws to go back to their own homes because of all this disruption the death of her husband and sons had caused, and she kissed them both, and she anticipated really a final parting. She anticipated them to go back to their ways. But this only really stirred up the emotions when Naomi did this, when she hugged and kissed them. They began to weep. And then they're going to be the protested, right, with her, that they would indeed stay with Naomi. They wanted to stay with her and help take care of her, go back with her to her homeland, because they had now became a part of her community. And so Naomi kept trying to discourage them. She was telling them she would have no more sons, right? She was too old to have any more kids, so she wasn't going to be able to have any more sons for these two women to marry. And they'd been waiting an awful long time to marry them. And so it was like, why would you stay with someone that God had seemingly forsaken? Maybe Naomi started feeling like we do, that we feel forsaken because of the bad things that's happened. But that's not the case. But they would have so much easier task of finding those husbands in their own land to get remarried. But Naomi prayed that the Lord would deal kindly with the two women. Naomi had been away from home for more than 10 years by now, but she still held firmly to her faith in the Lord. She still held on to the God of Israel. She didn't start worshiping the Baal and all the idols of the land of Moab. She stayed faithful and true to the Lord God of Israel. And so she had even imparted all this into her two daughter-in-laws about the God of Israel. And so the word deal kindly was in Hebrew that refers to the loyal love that was established by covenant. And so it's often used here to describe God's covenant dealings with Israel, because she was praying that God would extend this to her daughter-in-laws who were not from Israel. They were from the land of Moab. And when she prayed, they find rest. It was talking of finding the security here that a woman had in a marriage, and someone that they would be free of the troubles of being a widow, of what being a widow would bring without someone to take care of them, without the financial aid or help that they needed. And so that's what she was praying for these two women, her two daughter-in-laws, of finding rest. Verse 14, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. And so Orpah was all about taking the request of Naomi and staying in her own land, staying in the land of Moab. But Ruth, however, clave to Naomi. She grabbed a hold of Naomi. She didn't want to leave her. She wanted to go with her. She was going to be committed to her. And being committed with Naomi, she was also going to be committed to her God. She was going to be committed to the God of Israel. And so the two daughter-in-laws were given the choice to return to their own homes. Orpah returned to Moab, while Ruth stayed with Naomi. Ruth did not want to return to Moab, right? She wanted to go with Naomi. She clave unto her. She was glued to her mother-in-law. She had this bond with Naomi, and she wasn't going to leave her side no matter what. She was going to go with her if she had to force herself upon Naomi or whatever, or hold on to her dress tail or whatever. She was going to return back to the land of Bethlehem with her mother-in-law. She pledged to journey back to Israel with her, and Ruth would go with Naomi and live with her. In doing so, she was going to adopt her nationality and her worship of her God. And so Ruth had the opportunity to find community here. She found community in her new family with Naomi. She found that part, and she had embraced this with all of her heart, with all of her mind and soul. She had embraced this new family that she had found with Naomi. And so this was the first step here that led really to Ruth's inclusion in the messianic line here, from which Jesus was born. And so we see here that the grace of God to one who did not belong to his people, but was given a place of honor in that society, and she would be remembered forever. Ruth's been remembered forever by this, because we are also under that same grace, because we were not born of Jew, right? We're considered Gentiles. So we were not considered to really belong to those people. But by the grace of God, we have been given this. We have been given this place of honor. It is a place of honor for us. And so this great love story that we've studied today, it points us really to an even greater one. There's an even greater love story than this. It was God's love for the church, which led him to give up his only begotten Son to reconcile us into his family. God, that's a great love story, right? We've heard the story of Abraham and Isaac. You know, he didn't want to do it, but he was going to do it. But God provided another sacrifice, thank God. And so the same way with us, God provided a sacrifice. He provided his only begotten Son to come and bleed and die for us, for our sins and the sins of the world, so that we could be reconciled into the family of God, so we could be a part. And so that's really the greatest love story that could ever be told. And so we know that truly a community is a family. that is bound by love and not just by blood. And so Ruth was a foreigner. She was a foreigner, but she chose to find a home with Naomi there in Bethlehem. And so God invites us all to accept a place into his own family. He invites us. He waits for us. He wants us. He wants to include us into his great, great big family. He wants all of us. It's not his will that any man should perish, right? That's not the will of God. He wants everyone to come under the saving grace and knowledge of his Son, Jesus Christ. It's not God that puts anybody in hell. We do that by our own decision, by our own stubbornness. It's not him that does it. He gives us free will to choose what we want to do, right? If we choose the wrong way, then we know what's going to happen, right? If we choose the right way, we know we're going to wind up in heaven one day. So we want to make the right choice, right? We want to accept him because it's free. He gives it freely. We don't have to pay anything for it. It doesn't cost us a dime. It doesn't cost you a penny, right? You'll get a mansion for free. He says he will prepare a mansion for us. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know how great or how big or whatever. I'll be fine with just a one-room cabin. But he says he prepares for us a place to be with him. And it didn't cost us nothing, but it cost him everything. It cost him his life. And so it's a wonderful message here for us today, that we were once outside the realm of God's kingdom. But through his grace, he has invited each and every one of us back inside its borders, where we are now part of his family. We're part of the family of God. We did nothing to deserve it. We didn't do anything to deserve it. But God in his mercy, he forgave us of our sins in Jesus Christ. And by doing that, he made us his very own. He made us part of the community. He made us a part of the family. And just as Ruth found a new family with her mother-in-law, Naomi, here, so we have found a new home in Jesus and what he did for all of us on Calvary's Hill. It's our calling, however, to help others find this new community, this family of God. You know, when God becomes our Heavenly Father, we are brought into this new relationship with all the others who love him. And so people in some other religions, they have no concept of the fatherhood of God. And so it's vital, though, for us as Christian believers. It's vital for us to have the concept of the fatherhood of God, because he is the greatest father, right? And so Ruth declared here full and lasting commitment to her mother-in-law, Naomi. She committed to everything. She was in complete dedication to the people of Israel and total acceptance of the living God of Israel. And so this is a remarkable woman here, Ruth is, that continues and is an example for each and every one of us as believers.